Hi, my name's Nick Button, and I'm going to be here showing you how to install a rudder on a sit-on-top kayak. We're going to take this 1/8 inch drill bit and we're going to drill 4 holes. We're going to drill 2, 1 beside each of these pedals, and then 2 in the back where the actual rudder is going to be mounted, here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up now. So the way I like to start this, because of the limited space in this area, is I'll start drilling at an angle until it catches. And then once I get the bit actually through the plastic, then we'll bring it back to as sharp of an angle as possible, because we want it to be as flush with the side of the kayak as possible. So I'm going to start doing that now. So now the bit is in, and so I'm going to go ahead and, while running the drill, angle it back this way and try to bore it out a little bit. The wire weight that we're going to be running is going to be a little bit thicker than this, but you want it to be as tight as possible to prevent any kind of leakage inside of the kayak. And so now I'm going to switch to the other side. We'll do the same thing. All right, and that's that. So our next step is we're going to remove these little brackets here, and we're going to insert them into these secondary brackets, and then they're just going to go right back on the side just like they are there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So once these are all set up, they're just going to look exactly like this. We're going to have this little housing mounted on the wall, and the original bracket with the pedal on it should slide freely all the way back to here, but shouldn't be able to come out of it. What we've done here is we've cut 9-foot sections of this cable housing, and so what we're going to do with this is we're going to take the end and we're going to feed it from just behind the pedals in through the little holes that we drilled. And we're going to, when you feed it in, you want to try to feed it with the natural curvature of the wire facing into the wall. What tends to happen with this stuff is if you don't feed it right, it will curl up back here and it won't be making any progress at all. And then you'll have to pull it back out and do it again. So I try to make sure that it's going to be facing in towards the wall. And we'll get inserted, run it a little bit. We'll go over here to the rod holder. We'll check it to make sure that it's on track. If it is on track, then we'll keep running it until we'll be able to reach it from the little hatch down there. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that now. Okay, so at this point, as you can see, we've got the wire run all the way through here. I left about 2-inch little stub on the end. But then over here, once I've got it through the little hatch hole that we have, I'm going to take the wire and I'm going to trim a little edge on it. It just makes it easier to push through these little holes because, as previously mentioned, you want this to be as watertight as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down. I'm going to go up here, reach inside, kind of feel around for the hole, and you should be able to see that little piece peek out there. There it is. And so I'll feed it through a little bit, and then I'll grab my needle nose pliers, grab the end of this, and then we'll pull it through, and that will be our cable housing. That's that. So you want there to be a little bit of length on either side, but the end length isn't necessarily important because we're going to trim it down to about 1/4 inch on both sides. Plural. Okay, so what I've done here with these is I've cut them off at a 45-degree angle so that they're as flush with the side of the boat as possible. Same in the back, cut them off at a 45. And before you cut these, you want to make sure that the tightness of these lines, because they'll be free floating inside here, but you can reach your hand inside of the hatch and you'll be able to feel them. You want them to be taut, but not too tight. The tighter they are, the more it's going to bind. You want it to be a little bit loose, but not so much that it's going to fall down. Our next step is we're going to mount the rudder and we're going to run our wires. So here we have our gudgeon. This is going to be the mount for the rudder. It's going to attach into 2 pre-mounted brass fittings on the end here, and they will be attached with these little stainless steel bolts here. So I'll go ahead and do that. So on the bottom of the rudder insert, there's going to be a little pin. All you got to do is remove the pin, and then this rod is just going to insert right into the gudgeon. And then you reinsert the pin, and bam, our rudder is mounted. So next we're going to set up the rudder deployment. So what we have is each of these little inserts. We're going to have one of these guys here, we're going to have one of these guys here, and then we're going to have this, which is going to catch your little deployer just behind the rod holder there. And so to mount those, we're going to be using these little Phillips screws. So for this next step, we're gonna need 6 feet of this marine grade string, and we're gonna need one of these little stopper balls. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down to the end here. There's going to be a little hole in the top of the rudder there. We're gonna run our string through it. There we go. Set that there. Okay, so we're gonna take this string. Once our knot is tied off there on the end, it's gonna run through this little point here. And then it's gonna run down through this little point here. We're gonna use our needle nose to grab that end, pull that up there, and then it'll slide down through that next insert and through this last one. And then once we've reached the end of this, it'll slide up into this little component. So when everything is installed and ready to go, you'll be able to freely put your feet on the pedals and pull this up. That'll lock the rudder in place. And then as soon as this pushes down, that will hold it there. So that is secured. And then on this side, I'm gonna drop our little ball here onto it. And I'm just gonna tie another little stopper knot on the end, leaving about 6 inches of length, whatever. It's really a preference thing, whatever's more comfortable for you. I'm just gonna tie that guy off in the same way. 3 passes around my finger and then around through the back. And then at the end, we'll go through and we'll trim those off and we'll burn them with a lighter in order to keep them from fraying. So the next step is we're gonna run the cables. So the biggest thing with these is if they become frayed at all, they're gonna get stuck in the housing. So you wanna make sure that the end is nice and tight, not too frayed out or anything like that. What I like to do is I like to start on the end nearest the paddles because there's a hard angle here. If you come in from the other side, it's gonna be harder to push it through there. But installation is pretty simple. We're just gonna take the wire, you're gonna insert it into the housing, and then we're just gonna run it through. We're gonna go through, we're gonna snip these ends here. Okay, so for this next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a little loop here on the end of the pedal. So what you need to do first is cut a little section of shrink wrap. Usually I'll do about a 1/4 inch length, and that has to go on first before you feed it through the loop. Next, we're gonna take our little crimp, little double-ended crimp there. That's gonna get run through second. And then we're gonna take this, it'll run up through that little hole there. And then this little loop is gonna run back down through the crimp. Once that's in there, I'll adjust the loop. So feeding in this, shortening it up until it's as tight as you can get it. The tighter the better. Something like so, maybe a little bit tighter there. And then once I have that in there, I like to hang about a 1/4 inch of tail, just enough so that the shrink wrap will cover up that little tail there. And then we'll go ahead and crimp this with our crimpers. Once those are on, that's fastened. The little shrink wrap will slip up over the little tail there, and then take a lighter, give it a little bit of heat, just enough to warm it up, press on it, bam. So that'll be, for this side, we'll do the same thing on the other side. We have to remove the housing that's actually on the rudder itself. So you'll see that there's these little covers that go on either side of it, and there's gonna be 2 small bolts, like so, on each side that we're gonna wanna take out. And then once you get on the inside there, you also wanna remove these little metal pieces, and there will be another screw in there. And so this is what is going to hold the cable in place. So in order to keep these pedals from shifting during this next adjustment part, what you wanna do is take like a little strip of tape or adhesive and just make sure that they're flush with the end there. I usually run this little loop just right to the edge of this outer housing, and then tape it in place so it's not gonna shift while we're adjusting our wires. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna go ahead and set up our cables. What they're gonna do is they're gonna run through this little bottom hole. There's gonna be 2 of these holes here. You wanna use the bottom one because this is gonna be where your screw insert goes. So we're gonna run that back through. And then we're gonna make sure that it's nice and tight, and then it's gonna get pushed over here. There's gonna be a little channel on the edge of that, and you want your cable to run in the channel, and then once it's adjusted in there, we'll go ahead and cap it off with this little cap that came inside of the rudder. So once I got that guy in there, we're gonna grab this little piece here is what's gonna hold it in place. So it's gonna get dropped down on there. A little finicky, just be patient. just making sure that the cable here stays as tight as you possibly can get it. And then once that's in there, we'll go ahead and grab our Allen wrench and we'll tighten it down. Okay, so we've got our cables in here. They're run tight and they're tightened down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here to our little cable. It's gonna be pulled up and we're gonna deploy the rudder. Goes down. And we're gonna go back down here to our pedals. We're gonna remove our fastening tape and we're gonna go ahead and test it. Starboard, starboard. All right, okay. So what we're gonna do here is essentially the same setup as down by the pedals. What we're gonna do is you're gonna run the shrink wrap in first and then the crimp. This little loop is gonna come around and go down through the crimp. And then once you have like a little 1/4 inch tail, we'll go through, we'll tighten it down and then we'll heat shrink. Okay, something like that. Cool, and that side's good to go. That way, we have a little bit of extra cable in the event that you want to go through and adjust the length, like say it's not tight enough or you want to have a little bit more leeway, you can go through and readjust that. Last step there was to replace these little end caps, keeping everything encapsulated in there. And then in order to retract the kayak, or retract the rudder, you simply put both feet on each of the pedals and then pull up on this, and that should lock it into place. And then you're good to go. So yeah, that's just about it. My name is Nick Budden, and this has been a production of sitontopkayak.com. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.